All right, it's time for Yogi and the BeachMan. Hi, I'm Jim the Yogi.
And I'm Rick Beach, the BeachMan.
We're two Michigan transplants now living in Southwest Florida.
In fact, we're cousins born in 1964, just a month apart.
I like to meditate.
And I like to play bass in a band.
I'm into chanting Om.
And I'm into throwing down some classic rock.
But together, we're on a mission
to promote people that are helping other people.
We want to make the world a better place.
One conversation at a time.
So sit back,
turn up the volume,
and get ready to laugh.
Because we like to have fun
while we spread the love.
Interviewing lovely people. Yes, we have fun.
Welcome back to this week's episode of Yogi and the BeachMan. Today we are with Cheyenne Zoelle. She's a life coach, psychic, author, and most of all, a survivor. She just came out with a new book, Unbreakable. Welcome to the show, Cheyenne.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm excited to have you. And those of you who probably noticed, the BeachMan's not here today. We had some scheduling snafus and stuff today, so I'm doing this podcast solo. So sorry you're missing out on the BeachMan. He's an amazing guy. So tell us about your story. I mean, really, what? I think I saw that you were kidnapped twice.
I was actually kidnapped more than twice and by different men. And my book, Unbreakable, which you can find on Amazon, goes over really everything, including how I found myself in that position of being kidnapped multiple times within a year. I'm 29 right now, but when I was 21, I was kidnapped multiple times. And
Within 1 year, you were kidnapped multiple times?
by different men, correct.
How did this happen?
So, to go about explaining how it happened, I believe it's important to go into the beginning. So, my childhood was marked with every single kind of abuse uh, imaginable. In fact, I had a therapist tell me my childhood was the most abusive that she had come across in her entire career. So, growing up in a really horrifically abusive childhood where I was locked in a bedroom for months on end, only allowed to leave to go to the restroom, I was kept out of school. I was forced to be, trigger warning for people listening, I was forced to be in an incestuous relationship with my parent. And it was really a childhood that broke me down emotionally and mentally and physically. I do have lifelong complications, unfortunately, due to the severity of my abuse. So, growing up, my mother would often tell me as I was locked away in a bedroom, she would say, "Be quiet and pretend you don't exist. No one wants you here." And to be so young as a child and to hear those words penetrating into your psyche,
And how old were you at this time?
she started to isolate me really when I was about 7 years old.
Wow.
And I shared a bedroom with her until she died when I was 18. So I was really locked away for years on end, allowed to go to the store occasionally, allowed to go to church occasionally. Um, and for the most part, it really was just this pure seclusion. So starting from a very young age, she would say to me, Cheyenne, be quiet, pretend you don't exist. No one wants you here. And she would say it so casually, meaning the other people in the household didn't want me there. So I was locked away. And having those words just penetrate into my brain, everything for so long, it caused my self esteem as a young woman to be really in the ground, in the ground. And there was this other side of the coin that I talk about in the book where when my mother passed away, it felt like my only true source of love in this world had been stripped from me because I thought of her more than my mother. Unfortunately, that's just how things progressed in that unhealthy childhood. So, feeling like my one source of love in this world had been taken from me, I unfortunately had a very skewed viewpoint of things. So I was seeking love in different avenues. I threw myself into church, and the book goes over some unfortunate experiences I had. I'm a very spiritual person. I pray to God and the universe, but I had some unfortunately horrifically not so fun experiences in the church. So, all this being said, childhood abuse, neglect, rejection, I allowed myself to be in very dangerous situations. And that leads to the first kidnapping. Again, I was 21 and I,
And where was all this taking place? Where did you live?
this is a great question. So I was kidnapped multiple times from Tuolumne County. Now, this is
What
very
county?
Tuolumne County.
Where's that?
That is in the foothills of California, hidden away, secluded. Now, this is very important, and I go over this in my book. An unusual amount of people go missing from Tuolumne County. In fact, if you look up online, there is a Facebook group called The Missing of Tuolumne County because so many people go missing. And I go over this a little bit more in the book.
How do you spell that county name?
Tuolumne, Tuolumne County.
Okay.
So it's a unfortunately it's a very I would like to say dangerous place, especially with how my cases were handled. And I go over this in more detail in the book. Um, but when I was first kidnapped that first time, I was 21. I found myself at a bar with some newly made friends. And I'm at that young age, not to excuse my behavior, because ultimately I did have some ownership in it. I was at that age where you're young, you're partying, and I drank too much. My friends decided to leave me. And the next thing I know, I'm talking to an older gentleman. Unfortunately, I was too intoxicated to even really stand upright. The next thing I know, the older gentleman had me in the back of a cab. Unfortunately, things progressed and I was taken to a motel room outside of town where I could not consent. Things happened that I could not consent to. And the book goes over it in a bit more detail, but I wake up with a pile of money thrown on me. Now, this right here, I'm sad to say, out of all of my kidnappings, was the least traumatic. And that is, I believe, saying something. I was kidnapped in the sense where I was taken without being able to consent fully from a bar, put into a cab, taken to a motel. So that was the first kidnapping. Now, that was something that I struggled with a lot of guilt, a lot of shame around for years. What happened during my first kidnapping was not at all appropriate whatsoever. I do have some ownership in it because I was not being a responsible adult, but doesn't justify what happened.
Right.
Now, moving forward, I get kidnapped 3 more times within a year, and each one gets progressively worse. And it's crazy to think that I survived multiple kidnappings, but I did. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book about it, to really shed light on the social issues and then the social justice issues, because the way that my cases were handled were really something out of a horror movie. In fact, I go over it in the book, but my police report, I found out years later, it had been essentially, in my opinion, painted to not make me credible. And later on, turns out I was telling the truth, and evidence came to light, and then the police department believed me. But going back, yes, I was kidnapped 4 times within a year, and the other 3 times were by somebody that I ended up crossing paths with.
What do you mean crossing paths with? And
So
I also want to ask, were these other three the same type of situations where you went to the bar, got too drunk, and ended up leaving with somebody you didn't know?
unfortunately, it was much more traumatic than that. So I was 21
Mm-hmm.
and I found myself in a store. And in the store, in this small, primarily white town, I see this man who I think is just gorgeous. He's handsome, he's exotic looking. He looks like a tan um, Filipino Asian man with blue eyes. And he starts to sing to me in the store. And having had no sense of self respect or esteem, I just milk this moment. Oh my goodness, this handsome man is like a fresh drink of water in this desert. I end up forming a friendship with this very handsome man, and
Immediately or over time or
it was pretty immediately. Later
okay.
that day, he had found me on Facebook and added me, meaning that he had searched my name in a small town. It was easy for me to show up. So we become friends, and eventually a romantic connection blossoms. And
Okay.
he's telling me every single thing that I long to hear. Oh, I love you, Cheyenne. I'm the only one in this world who truly loves you. And he just instantly sucks me in.
And
Come
how
to
much
find
older
out,
is he?
come to find out, he's actually much older than what I originally thought. So he was
Oh,
very young looking. I thought he was about 21, my age. Turns out he's 35.
okay.
So he has been around the block. He knows what to say. I'm young. I'm naive. I'm just soaking this all up. And he knows that I don't have a strong sense of community or a strong sense of family due to the toxic things of my upbringing. So I really attach myself to him because he's attaching himself to me. And I'm perceiving this as love. And I'm ignoring the red flags. He begins to become controlling. And then it leads into the first time he kidnapped me. Now, the first time he kidnapped me, we were in his apartment on his family's large property. He is playing music. He wants to be this fancy musician, and he's on Spotify and YouTube, and he's just bragging about how he's going to be famous one day. He's playing his music, and I talk while he's playing his music, which was rude of me, I will admit. And instead of having a healthy, normal reaction of like, hey, please stop talking while I'm playing music, he flies into a rage. And I've seen him fly into rages before, but this is pretty bad. And I decide to remove myself from the bathroom where he's playing his music. He gets in front of me. And again, this is a trigger warning for people. He pushes me down. He says, "You're not leaving this this bathroom, until I'm done playing my song." I try to get up again and he pushes me down. And so he holds me hostage in his bathroom for 30 minutes. Now, this, out of all of the times he kidnaps me, is by far the most mild because each time it gets worse and worse. So, after being really physically forced to be stuck in a bathroom for 30 minutes as I tried to escape, he somehow convinces me to stay. There's the doting upon me. Oh, I'm sorry. I love you. And there's so many red flags that I'm overlooking. He secretly watches me while I'm in the shower one day. He secretly recorded me while I was sleeping. He is becoming more and more possessive. He doesn't want me to hang out with people. He is now controlling how I look. And I am perceiving this all as love. He's telling me, dye your hair black, dye your pubic hair black. I only want you wearing black eyeshadow. And it becomes more obsessive. Then he goes on to kidnap me a second time. The second time was by far one of the most terrifying moments of my life. I had forgiven him for the first kidnapping because my mind did not register it as a kidnapping. I registered it as, oh, my boyfriend locked me in the bathroom for 30 minutes and he was mad
Hmm.
at me, which that in itself is atrocious and disturbing. But one of the red flags I'm overlooking is his constant fear that I am cheating on him. So one day, while we are at his home in his apartment, an argument and just flares up, and I see that he's getting angry. I want to leave because I see how he has been when he's angry in the past. He's locked me in the bathroom. At one point, I discussed it in the book. He tried to light my hair on fire. He got angry at me and grabbed me by my hair and tried to light my hair on fire. And I still stayed because I thought this is what love was, because I had nothing else to compare it to. So seeing the argument, he just gets angry randomly and is saying, "Oh, you're cheating on me. You're cheating on me. You have a secret cell phone I don't know about. I didn't." Things of that nature. And I decide I want to remove myself from the situation. He's randomly gotten vile and angry, and I need to remove myself from the situation. I didn't want to be locked in the bathroom again for 30 minutes. And unfortunately, it got so much more horrifying. As I'm trying to leave, as he's yelling at me, telling me, "Oh, you're doing this, you're doing that. I know you're being unfaithful." I walk out of his apartment, and it's at the top of these stairs that you have to go down to escape. So, sometime from the point of when I am removing myself from the situation to get to the top of the stairs, because he has flown into a fit of rage. Sorry, this is so hard for me to talk about. He comes in front of me. He pulls out a weapon and he
What kind of
says,
weapon?
he had a large actual sword that he kept in his bedroom.
Okay.
And it wasn't like a fake sword, it was a real heavy, sharp sword. So he had run back and he had grabbed the sword and he gets in front of me to stop me from leaving. And he pulls it up, he puts it in my face. And he says words that I will never forget. He says to me, "If you try to move past me, things will get ugly." And it was this moment of disbelief, shock, and sheer terror that just filled me. And I remember feeling hopeless and helpless. And he orders me back into his home. And I know that I have no other option because he has a weapon. He's stronger than me and he's ordering me back. I could call for help, but will the police get there in time? His parents won't hear me. They're on the other side of the property. So he orders me back into his home and his apartment. And the next 2 hours were just pure brutal. And that was the second time he kidnapped me.
When you say pure brutal, was he assaulting you? What?
No, he was screaming at me. At one point, he did grab because I was crying. I wanted to leave. He grabbed my face and put his hand over it and told me to shut my effing mouth.
Okay.
And it's I remember just being berated for 2 hours as he's screaming at me, like spit is speckling on my face. He is just
Mm-hmm.
enraged because he has formed this imaginary narrative that I had been unfaithful. And it was really, um, at the time, I didn't think of it as kidnapping. I just knew something terrible was happening and I couldn't escape because he has this sword that he's going to pick up and he is threatening to use it on me.
Gotcha. And then there was
After,
a third event as well?
correct. So before we get into the third one, it's important to go over how the police handled the second one.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually, he allows me to leave. I've convinced him I'm not cheating on you. I love you. I'll stay with you forever, etc. I am crying and I'm beside myself. And I couldn't, it's interesting how the mind processes things. I couldn't fathom really that I had been kidnapped and held hostage with a weapon. Like I said, I knew it was terrible and I knew I wasn't free to leave because he had threatened me with the weapon. And I think the mind puts almost like a protective coating when you have a traumatic event. And it reframes things in the way of it doesn't use the word it's exactly being kidnapped. It, at least for me, it was just I knew something horrible had happened. And I still, my whole body was shaking. I was beside myself. And my friend told me, I had called her. She said, "We're going to the police station right now." So we go to the police station and I told them what happened. And it was one of those moments where it was something out of a horror movie. I shared, hey, my boyfriend got angry with me. Um, I tried to escape and he put up his weapon to me and he put the blade in my face and he said the words, if you try to move past me, things will get ugly. And to my shock and horror, they said those words lack the legal clarity we need to arrest him. They're open to interpretation. He did not exactly say he was going to kill you or harm you. And in my opinion, to this day, I feel that that is absolutely atrocious. They said the most you can do is just get a restraining order. It's and consider it um, a domestic dispute. But it was beyond that. It was a kidnapping, and it was being held hostage and threatened with a weapon when you tried to escape. But
Were you living there at the time?
no, I had
Okay.
my own apartment across town.
Okay.
So it was something absolutely just horrifying. I felt like the cops did not believe me. So eventually, the man that I'm seeing somehow convinces me to take him back. And it's those exact same words of I love you, I care about you. Um,
Wait, you went back with the same guy? Okay.
and that really shows and I talk about this in the book, the psychology between the victim and the predator, especially when you grow up in a childhood where there is no love, there's not a sense of safety. So this almost felt like it almost in some weird way, on some level, it felt familiar because my mother was so abusive and toxic and belligerent, like this man would get. But this was just so much worse. So I somehow am convinced to take him back. And that is one of the biggest regrets that I've had. I believe it's okay to have regret as long as you don't stay in that place of regret. So I have a regret in taking him back, but there also is a lesson in this. Um, and that's what I mean when I say not to stay in that place of regret. It's you can acknowledge the regret, but don't let it consume you. And that, as a life coach, I really always strive to take my own advice. So the third kidnapping was, whew, um, by far the most horrifying. And it took years of intense therapy to fully heal from. And I will be completely honest, I am a transparent life coach. I still sometimes have PTSD flashbacks. I from it. I still have certain things that I have that sometimes come up from the trauma of being kidnapped this final time.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's more than understandable. Some horrific situations.
Absolutely. And also, what I feel, and I talk about it in the book, is that I highly, highly believe that this man who kidnapped me 3 times actually is responsible for the disappearance of others. And I talk about this, like I said, more in
Do
the
you have
book.
any evidence of that?
I have to be careful with my words, but I will say this. There is a tremendous amount, in my opinion, of people who go missing from Tuolumne County. And
Mm-hmm.
also looking at the facts, this man was 35 years old. This wasn't just something that had emerged randomly. He was in his late 30s. This must have been a pattern in his life. This man also has a very long rap sheet of violent crimes, etc. Now, with that, I will go into some more detail, and talking about my final kidnapping, I think will help paint a more detailed picture as to why I believe he is very much likely behind the disappearances of others. So it felt like the third kidnapping had been almost planned. He tricked me into getting into his car.
How did he trick you?
He said to me, why don't we go to the store? Would you like to go to the store with me? And I said, sure. He said, go get ready. And again, I knew what that meant. He was very particular about my appearance. As mentioned, he made me dye my hair and my body hair black. He wanted my eye makeup very heavy and dark. He was very particular. He would choose my outfits. Everything had to be just to his liking. So he says, "Go get ready." Pushes me towards the bathroom. I know what that means. He wants me to go doll up. So I doll up and we get in the car. And long story short, he takes us to this abandoned house outside of town. Now, we had been in this abandoned house multiple times before.
For
In a
what reason?
small town, it was there's not really a lot to do, and so going exploring. I had many friends who would go and explore different things. It was just a house that we like to go out and you'd play music. We would dance. Um, you know, kiss,
Okay.
cuddle. It was always romantic, and it overlooked the nearby city lights. And it was a romantic place for us, or so I thought. Somehow his demeanor changes. We're at this abandoned house on the outskirts of town, and his demeanor changes, and there's something off. And he basically just gets us back in the car and he starts driving. And I ask him after a little while, I'm like, "Where are you taking us?" Because I knew this wasn't the right way. Something was wrong. His It was like he had become almost possessed by this cool faced demon. There was just something, the air in the car had just turned black and heavy. And all of my bells are going off. This is not right. Something's wrong. I'm in danger. And he says, "We're going back to town." And I said, "No, we're not. This isn't the way. Where are you taking us?" And he told me, "Shut the F up." And I knew, oh my God, this is bad. This is really bad. It was like I want to say he almost had a split personality, but it wasn't quite like that. It's just something, things got very dark very quickly. So he's driving us along this back road and he's ordered me to shut the F up. And I start panicking. I start panicking. Something is wrong. And I start to get angry. And I'm like, "Who do you think you are? You take me back home right now." I'm terrified, but I'm also angry. I'm like, "Seriously, I want to go back home." Because on some level, I don't think I realized how serious things were going to get. And he proceeds to yell at me and he gets violent. So, a detail that I forgot to mention is that this individual smoked meth. He smoked a decent amount of it, and he would insist that I smoke meth too. Now, this is a very important thing to note is that I have severe ADHD. And if I smoked one or two puffs of meth, it didn't cause me to get belligerent or crazy. It would cause my mind to calm down. But this is the thing, I never got addicted to meth. I smoked it in, I would say, very small intervals because also it would make me very ill. Now, that I think is important to note in this context, and I will tell you why. So he gets angry with me because I am wanting to leave. I know in my gut and heart soul something's wrong. He pulls off to the side of the road and he pulls out a meth pipe. He puts it in my mouth and I say, "No, I'm good. I don't want any. I did not want to get sick. It made me atrociously ill if I did anything before beyond one or two puffs." And I had done
And
two
you had
puffs.
already had some?
I had done like one or two puffs earlier in the night. Yes.
Okay.
But I'm still conscious, I'm alert. I've heard that meth makes some people lose their grip of reality. That was never my experience. In fact, I offer sobriety coaching now, and I've never touched it in 8 years.
Okay.
But it calmed my mind down, almost as if I had taken an Adderall for ADHD. But anyways, so I said, "No, I'm good. I don't want any more." And he overpowers me. He shoves it in my mouth and he rips the inside of my lip. There's a pool of blood. And he says, "You smoke this." And he's overpowered me. And I'm realizing, oh my gosh, I don't have options right now. He could have the sword. He could, you know, I've seen how angry he gets. I can't believe I put myself in this situation by being with him again. So many different thoughts are going through my mind. So he forces me to smoke some more. And this is almost one of my saving graces, is the fact that it didn't cause me to lose my mind. In fact, I was incredibly alert. And that, I think, helped me hold on to a sense of power, a sense of control, because he was trying to remove that control and power from me. Thank God I have ADHD, and that did not work. But things get even darker because now he like continues to drive, and then he pulls off to another side of the road because we're in the back roads of this small hillbilly county, and it's just forest and dark roads. He parks again, he opens the car door, and he pushes me out. I'm trapped now. I had no idea what he planned next. He instantly gets out of the car and he like grabs me by the arm and drags me up from the ground, and he pulls out a phone and he says, "You need to pose for the camera." I'm like, "No, what's going on?" Like, no. And I'm crying at this point. I have already been overpowered. I've been forced to smoke meth. I've had my lip ripped. And now I've gotten pushed out of the car. And he's telling me to pose for photos. And he's saying,
On the ground or together? What kind of photos?
"I apologize about that. That was my timer for this podcast. I apologize."
No worries.
So he wanted me to pose for photos standing up, and he's
Okay.
positioning me like I'm his living doll. He wanted to be in some of the photos. He wanted, I think, most of the photos to be of me. And at this point, I'm crying. I'm begging to be brought home. I am telling him multiple times, I don't want to do this. But
Is it
he's
light
yelling
out,
at,
dark out?
oh, it's nighttime now. We are in
Okay.
pitch black darkness other
Okay.
than the lights on his vehicle. It is terrifying. So he has us get back in the car, and I've already gone from angry to crying and just begging to be brought home. Nothing's working with him. And he continues to drive longer. And then he pulls off the side to another back road. And again, he orders me out of the vehicle. And again, he forces me to pose for more photos. This game of his, where he is drugging me and forcing me to pose for photos in random back roads when I'm crying and begging to be brought home, it lasts for hours. At one point, I had to use the restroom, and he forced me to use it outside like an animal. I felt completely helpless. I was terrified. I didn't know what was going to happen. At one point, he talked about selling me on the dark market, saying that he could get easily a few $1,000s for me. It was something out of a nightmare, and it continued on repeatedly. The whole ordeal lasted for 12 hours. For 12 long hours, I was held against my will. For 12 long hours, I was drugged. For 12 long hours, I was forced to pose for photos. And that's something that sits pretty heavy. And like I said, that took years of intense therapy to really heal from. Um, and that is the third time that I was kidnapped.
Yeah, those don't sound like fun times at all. That's pretty rough. So what made you what you are now? I mean, now you're you promote yourself as a life coach. You're obviously an author
Correct.
to tell your story, and it also says on Facebook that you're a psychic. So
Correct. Yes.
what changed?
Quite a few things. And to go on that a little bit in more detail, I reported being held hostage, and this is
Hmm.
all going to come together in a moment. I reported being held hostage
Okay.
against my will for 12 hours. And to my shock, he was not even interviewed. So it took 7 years for new evidence to come to light. And when new evidence came to light, it was discovered that I was, in fact, telling the truth. And I don't want to give too much away because more of it is in the book, but the cops finally believed me. However, when I got a copy of my police report, I was appalled when I saw how things had been written years prior when I first reported being held hostage. And I was like, oh my goodness. They had told, they had written in the police report that I kept repeating myself, that I said I was high on drugs the whole night. They did not say that I was drugged against my will, which is a very
Hmm.
big difference. Taking 2
Sure.
puffs of meth and then being drugged against your will for hours, those are different things.
They are.
So, anyways, I saw how I had been misrepresented years prior and not taken seriously at all until new evidence came to light. And it was
What was the new evidence?
the new evidence was that he ended up confessing.
To
He ended up confessing to holding me hostage
okay.
and threatening me with a weapon that first time. He ended up confessing to holding me hostage for 12 hours. He ended up confessing to brutally raping me afterwards. He ended up confessing to everything. And my case was finally reopened. Finally. And it was this moment of vindication. Okay, we have the confession. We have the confession. And I actually got that confession myself. I got that confession myself. And that is in the book. He reached out to me and I secretly recorded him confessing to everything. And that was the new evidence that caused them to reopen my case.
Gotcha. Good for you.
Thank you. And that, how many victims can say, hey, I got a confession. No one
Mhm.
believed me for years. They thought I made up getting kidnapped and raped. They thought
Yeah.
I made up everything, being held hostage, threatened with a weapon. No, he confessed to every single thing.
So later in that night when he was taking the photos and making you smoke, he raped you that night?
No, this is the bizarre, crazy part. After that whole situation,
Mhm.
he convinced me to stay with him. And on my birthday, he got angry with me. My birthday was a month later after
So
my
you were staying
kidnapping.
with him for a month after this situation happened.
He convinced me to stay with him. As
Okay.
bizarre and horrifying as that sounds, I still some days cannot believe that I stayed with him after he kidnapped me the third time. So on my birthday, he wanted to take us out for a romantic getaway, because there was this push and pull. Let me destroy you and abuse you and let me
Mhm.
pull you back in. And a way to describe how horrifying he was when these moments of push and pull. One time he got angry with me because I wouldn't let him watch me use the restroom because he always tried to watch me use the restroom. It was such a power dynamic that he began to scream at me and berate me and basically push the door down. So there's this control. And then there's this other side where he's going to surprise me with all of these presents and tell me how much he dotes upon me and how I'm the first woman he's brought home to his parents in years, etc.
Mhm.
So I somehow stay. And the day of my birthday, he wants to sweep me away. And instantly I could not do it. I could not do it. All of those memories of being held hostage, of being drugged, of being forced to pose for photos just came swooping in like a storm. And I realized I couldn't do it. I said,
Mhm.
I'm not doing this. I can't do this. And he followed me into my apartment. And I talk about it in the book, but when he's on top of me, sorry, he's screaming at me and I'm crying. I'm saying, stop, please stop. You're hurting me. And he says, look at you. You're so lucky you have me. I turned down women for you. I was going to surprise you. I spent so much money on you, as he's raping me and he's screaming at me. It was a very brutal thing. And again, it felt like the cops did not believe me when I reported that. And I can see on some level, oh, well, this girl, she stayed with him after he supposedly kidnapped her and drugged her. Oh, and then he raped her. I can see it. However, they should have investigated it. And
Mhm.
years later, lo and behold, he confessed to everything clearly, every single thing. And it was
Mhm.
one of those moments in my life I felt vindicated. Oh my gosh, now everything has come to light. They all know I told the truth. My story never changed. It was
Yeah.
all consistent. So, anyways, after having all of these experiences in my life and
Did
going,
this all go to trial?
that is all in the book.
Okay.
And I don't want to give up too much, but I will say this. I am completely and utterly disappointed in our justice system, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Now, there is more detail in regards to the trophies. Turns out he had quite a lot of trophies, and that is one of the reasons why I really highly believe and suspect that he is behind the disappearances of others. In
Okay.
fact, a woman's remains had been found 20 minutes from where I was kidnapped from for the 12 hours. So it was really something out of a horror movie. And so, reflecting upon my experiences of the fact that I survived a horrifically abusive childhood, I survived I allowed myself to be in terrible situations. I will admit it, and allowing like myself to really have my life in danger. And then ended up getting kidnapped 4 times within a year when I was 21. I realized I had to really evaluate my life, and I saw two paths before me. I saw a path of brokenness and letting everything overtake me, and I saw a path of light. And that is how I became a certified life coach. That's how I went back to college to finish my degree. That is how I found the inspiration the strength to share my story, because I have been from the depths of the barrel. I have been locked in a bedroom for months, years on end. I have been kidnapped and forced to use the restroom outside by a madman. I have been brutally raped as a madman is screaming at me. I have had horrible things happen. And I am proud to say that I have come out the other side. And I devote myself to healing. And it's because I have been through the depths of hell. And yes, life still happens. Life is not perfect. But I learned that I had control, and I needed to take back that power and tap into my control and say, hey, this is my life to live. I'm going to reconstruct it my way. So I lost over 50 pounds. I became a certified life coach. I wrote my book. I went back to college, and I just threw myself into my path of healing because there was really only two paths before me. I'm an all or nothing person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you've come out the other side, like you said. So,
Thank
but
you.
I'm a little unclear on the story since we went into a lot of detail. Um, so after you were raped and
Yes.
then he left and then you decided like you needed to change your life at that point?
No, there are a few years where life was not the best. Um, I had a lot of years where I was broken because I'd gone through so much. 4 kidnappings within a year, I think, on top of being abused as a child, would make, I think, anybody lose their mind for a while. And so for a while, I was really in a dark place. I write in the book how I get promoted to operations manager of a company, and I'm
So
making a
he's
lot
all
of.
done. He's in the past at this point, right?
Correct.
And
Yes.
how old are you
Well, it
when
was
you're all done
about
with
what,
him?
22, 22.
Okay. So all that was just 1 year.
Correct.
Okay. Now you're 22 years old. He's in your past and you're
I moved states, and I have a few
okay.
years of just being broken. Um, just battling massive depression, anxiety. And finally, I get this big break where I get promoted to be an operations manager of company when I'm 25.
Okay.
And life seems to be looking up, but it still had its rocky moments. I had a very serious relationship fall through. I gained a ton of weight and became morbidly obese. And I really had to start pouring back into myself. So I tapped into spirituality. In fact, I run a self-help spirituality group. I've been
When you
running
say
it
you
for 8.
tapped into spirituality, I mean, what happened? This is why I want to get into the nitty-gritty of the change here.
The nitty-gritty was that I realized if I did not stay or pursue a path of light, that my
Mhm.
life was going to absolutely crumble. It had already
Yeah.
gotten pretty bad. Be walking around in a morbidly obese frame
Yeah.
was not healthy for me.
Mhm.
Everybody has their own choices. I respect everybody's choices. That was not for my highest good. And being in that situation where, okay, life is slipping, life is going through my fingers. I become an alcoholic. Things are just not going well.
Sure.
So I had this moment where it was like, okay, I need to make a change. So
Right.
I tap into spirituality, and that is really just calling upon my higher power. And I'm a very spiritual person, non religious. And I start this weekly self help group that I run to this day. We meet once a week. And I decide, okay, things are gonna have to change. So I did eventually go back to college, thankfully, and I become a certified life coach. The new evidence is brought to light, and I'm like, okay, this is it. This is it. And there's a whole investigation, and the district attorney of Tuolumne County, there's this whole long nightmare of a situation.
Hmm.
And that I got some pretty devastating news and all of that, which is, more in the book. And it was like a shattering of my soul. And I had to really think, okay, what's going to happen? Am I going to climb this mountain, or am I going to jump off the top? And I had to really choose, what is this going to be? So I poured myself into it. I poured myself into the healing journey. And what does being a life coach look like? What does being a person who taps into spirituality look like? What does this all mean? And along the way, I discovered that I have psychic intuitive abilities, and I decided to start using those gifts to help others. And I'm very blessed that I've been able to tap in and help others. And I've had many countless people tell me that I have helped them find clarity in things. So once I was able to kind of remove some of the guck and the yuck from my past and all this trauma, I was able to discover these intuitive abilities and my spirituality and my path, which was go back to college, lose weight, use my gift to help others, become a certified life coach, write books, and it all inspired me. And that's when I published my first book, which is Unbreakable.
Excellent. Sounds like a fascinating book. So
Thank you.
yeah, yeah, I'm Yogi. I'm big into the spiritual world and all that. So I kind of want to understand more about the spirituality that you tapped into, where that came from, what it looks like.
Great question. So I grew up in a somewhat religious household as well, and I was actually involved in ministry for a few years in my early adult years. Fun fact, surprises most people. And I had this understanding of God, of a higher power, but due to some really horrific religious abuse that I faced at the hands of a church, which is all in the book,
Hmm.
I kind of stepped away from that completely. But when I was at my lowest, I just felt the higher power. So, my higher power, really, this is how I do it and how I view it. I am a non denominational spiritualist. So, I believe in the universe. I still sometimes pray to God. I believe in my angels. I believe in my guardians. I believe in good spirits and bad, but I tap into everything that is of pure light. So, all of these positive energetic sources, I feel like, in my opinion, can all complement each other. So I do pray, as I mentioned, to my higher power, the universe, God, sometimes even Jesus, but I think of him as more of a in the non-religious sense. And my angels and my guides. And I rely on that whole source of spirituality. Anything that is of light and uplifting positive energy is what I align my spirit with. And that is something that really has been monumentally helpful. I'm a big fan of energy work and manifestation, and just tapping into positive frequencies, positive vibrations. And that all inspired me to start my weekly group called Metaphysical Minds Connect and Make Friends. It's on Facebook, and we always accept new members. And I just wanted to create a little happy spiritual community.
Awesome. I think we need more little happy spiritual communities.
I think so too. I think
Yeah.
we need some that are, uplifting and not oppressive.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Upliftment is very, very important. So, man, that was a lot.
I know. There's a reason why it says it's called Unbreakable, a chilling memoir of multiple kidnappings, survival, and a search for justice. It is not a
Yeah.
pleasant story, but it is a story that needed to be shared. And I'm
Hmm.
happy to say that I got out through the other side and I did not let these horrific experiences destroy me. I chose my path of healing, and that's something I have to choose every single day. And
Yeah, that's
sometimes I
awesome.
need to choose it multiple times a day.
Yeah, early on we had a lot of guests that would stories, of trauma, of just very difficult past, and a theme kept coming up of resilience. All these people and their resilience and how they were able to do so well even after all these traumatic events. And you're another one of those people, and not to take the victim role, but to turn it around and make something positive out of your life, and then to go on and help others. I mean, that's so important.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so I definitely applaud you for not, being that victim and just wallowing in that. You pulled yourself up by the bootstraps, it sounds like, and made a difference in your life.
Thank you. Absolutely. I am such a big advocate for inner transformation and healing. That is really what drives me. I went from
Hmm.
being, you know, an addict, not an addict, I'm sorry, alcoholic, and somebody who was just so depressed and broken, who got kidnapped multiple times, to now being a certified life coach and published author. And that's not to say that I am um, better than anyone else, not at all, but it's just show my resilience and my commitment to healing. And I want
Yeah.
to help inspire others.
And did you have any people along your way that were helping you, positive role models, influences? Um,
I did. I had some wonderful people along the way. Um, Lovely mentor I had by the name of Carol. She was wonderful. I still keep in contact with her to this day. She kind of took me under my wing and helped support me. I've had amazing
how did you
therapists.
find Carol?
Through a support group, actually, through a
Okay,
support group.
very
And I've
good.
had amazing, phenomenal therapists over the years that I still keep in contact with to this very day. And I've been so blessed. I think therapy is such an amazing tool if
Yes.
used correctly.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah,
I think that's
it's been
important for everybody.
wonderful.
And then you mentioned metaphysics. Where are you getting your source of metaphysical information and learning?
That's a great question. With books and like podcasts and videos that I found on YouTube, I just anything that has to do with the spiritual and metaphysical side, I absolutely love. Um, I want to write a book about all of my supernatural encounters because I've
Hmm.
had so many, especially in Tuolumne County, which is known for being very haunted.
Yeah.
I have a whole book that I'm working on about all of the supernatural encounters, and that really led me into tapping into the metaphysics as well, because I know that there was something beyond what we could see in the physical realm.
Okay. And was there like a couple maybe specific podcasts or books or things that really changed your life?
Yes. I really enjoyed The Secret and the
Hmm.
Law of Attraction. I feel that that is so tied into the metaphysical side of things. There is also this book called The Screw Tape Letters, and I know it's written by a Christian author. However,
Screw tape leathers? Say
The
that
Screw
again.
Tape Letters, yes.
Screw tape
By C.S.
letters.
Lewis. And
Okay.
that book, it is written by a Christian author. However,
Hmm.
I view it more secular and a more spiritual mindset
Okay.
because it talks about really, if you think about it, the outside entities that impact things. And so, with all of that, I feel that I was always I feel like I was always called to the metaphysical side of things. I just didn't listen until my mid 20s. And there's something that I really love. It's this saying that I heard at the beginning of my spiritual journey. And I can't remember who said it, but this is a motto that I absolutely love and live by. And I love sharing it. And it's the universe will play with you as much as you're willing to play with it. And
Oh,
that
that's
is all
beautiful.
about the things you put in to the universe is what you're going to be getting out of it.
Hmm.
And I think that is just something so beautiful. And I want to continue my spiritual journey. I say that I will be studying this for the rest of my life, and I will be on my deathbed, and I still won't know everything there is to know. I am somebody who is very open about, hey, I'm still on this journey too, but as I've learned, I will share what I've learned and what I've experienced. But it's been something that's just, so monumental. I'm actually surrounded by my altar of metaphysical things on this very table. And I love it. I would show you, but it's a little bit messy.
Very good. Well, hey, Cheyenne, this has been just a wonderful hour, a great conversation. Any final thoughts you have for our listeners today?
I would say don't ever give up hope and don't let anybody else write your story for you. You have the pen. This is your story. Make the most of it. Life will still happen. Things will still, not always go your way. But for the most part, have fun with it. And the universe will play with you as much as you play with it.
Great advice. So good. Well, and again, for those that are interested in the book, you can find that the book is Unbreakable. You can find that on Amazon.
By Cheyenne Zoelle.
Cheyenne Zoelle. Very good. All right. It looks like my video is locked up. Interesting. Well, you have a great evening. Thank you again for being on the podcast. Take care.
Thank you for having me.
So if you just listen to this podcast and you appreciate the content and the work that we're doing, we would love your support. Look in the comment section of this episode. Subscribe, rate us, comment. This gets our podcast in front of other listeners. And if you noticed, we don't have advertisers. For the cost of a cup of coffee, you can help keep it this way. Become a supporter right now. We'd appreciate it. I'm Jim the Yogi.
I'm Rick the BeachMan.
Peace.